has a habit of feeling kind of operatic B-movie. So how much did you struggle visually and design-wise with making such an old property?
Well, we kind of tried to straddle, because if you read the books, they really are born of that feel and look, but we didn't want it to be silly. But at the same time, we wanted to play off of, we played off every element of history from any culture that we could and did a mashup until it kind of felt like it had its own authenticity. So we really just went with our gut. All departments, the props, the costumes, the sets, the overall design.
I haven't read the book, but a lot of that must have come from the book. What elements came?
Visually, they were described in general, but they was never described so specifically that you really had that much of a guide. I kept going, I just want to believe it might have really existed. I just want it to be a period film of a period we just didn't know about. I want to make it feel like we did our Martian history, our Martian research so well that we felt like we caught its authenticity, even though it's fictitious. So we kept going to historical photography, historical, museums. I went to costume, exhibits with our costume designer. We looked at a lot of photos of nature. There's some weird stuff in nature that is even weirder than what we did there. But so we wanted it all to feel like it was evolved from nature. Like the desert required these species to have to look like that. So everything's pulled from elements that we are actually familiar with, whether it's man-made history or nature.
Stanton. Leading on from that earlier question on 3D, I was curious to know sort of your thoughts and insights into the 3D process, actually filming 3D, post-processing on...
I didn't film in 3D, so I don't know what that's like. But in all honesty, I shot this movie not knowing whether it was going to be in 3D or not, and I didn't want that extra distraction. I thought it was hard enough to make this movie as it was, and I didn't need that new element. So I knew that in post we'd have more control. You can really control a lot if you've got the budget for it, and actually have more control, because if you'll often spend all your budget just with the physical camera shooting all this stuff, and now you got to use it. But my feeling, I think I've been kind of open. Like 3D is not my first choice. As a film goer, I don't always choose it. Although I've now seen a couple films where I'm so glad I saw them that way. So it's like anything else. It's how the director, the filmmakers have used it. My bigger concern is whatever it takes to get people to keep going to the theaters or more to go to the theaters is my big drive. I mean, this and any other movie I've done is born of the love of going to the cinema, not being home watching something. And I really feel like it's in the same way that theater going is its own experience. Film going is a very unique experience in a large room with a collective response that you can just feel in the room. And it's not the same, no matter how good your system is at home. And so I'm going to sign up for anything that gets people to go to the theater.
Thanks.
So, believe it. I don't want this to seem like a fanboy's wish fulfillment. Right. I want this to seem like how it read to me as a kid. It felt like it was an antiquated document, and it just read like a tourist that had gone somewhere and journaled it all.
Yeah.
And it was really born of the desire to want to still explore and be an adventurer, just get on a boat and show up in some country people haven't discovered yet. So it doesn't have a lot of spaceness to it. It was pre the definition or the label science fiction, and so it was really out of just sheer innocence and naivete. It was the first book the author ever wrote. He was just so sick of reading what he thought were awful stories to his son that he said, I could write better than this, and wrote this. And I want to believe, even with all its faults, he just tapped that much more innocently into myth. And I feel like the same kind of thing happened to us on Toy Story. None of us had ever made a movie before, and we were outside of the machinery of how it was made, and we just did it off our gut. And that got us through a lot. It's kind of how the man got on the moon. It was like, a lot of engineers just were too young and stupid to know you couldn't do it.
I love that we're talking about Toy Story. I told you this was my best day ever. Okay. How closely did you stick to Edgar Rice Burroughs' story and characters, and what did you make? What did you change for the movie, and why?
Well, it's a long laundry list. My goal was make it feel like it felt to read the book, and also keep all the major characters and the major names of places.
What about things like, when he's given that drink of water once they sort of harvested those crazy
that was
babies?
our conceit, and the Therns were our conceit. The whole medallion and Gosh, the list goes on and
Right,
on.
you wouldn't know. I mean, so
We pulled stuff from other books. Burroughs wrote 11 books about these characters and about these places, so we had a lot of, it's like having an encyclopedia to pull from. The adaptation that I always hold, like, really in high regard for cinema is Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
I remember reading that book right when it came out and loving it, and then going to see the movie, I think, about a year and a half later, and feeling like, wow, they did exactly the book, and then going back, and they changed so much, but you didn't feel like it was sacrilege because he had kept the spirit of the book. And I realized that was the goal of going on there.
For the film, thank you. I just wanted to ask you why you didn't work with Thomas Newman on this film.
This is going to sound awful, but the only way we could afford to make this movie was because of the British tax incentive, and we gained a ton of money back for that we could write off for being able to shoot it all here, do all the post here and everything. And one of the requirements is that the composer has to be of either British nationality or European, and Thomas was not. Ironically, at the same time, just on his own, Michael Giacchino had been lobbying me the whole time. He really, really wanted to do this project. And I thought he couldn't do it either, but then he goes, oh no, I have an Italian passport as well. And that's how Michael got in, and I'm so glad. It really just feels like, the shoe fit with this. He just really got to just go full space opera with it.
The score's amazing. Okay, wait. Is that very good? No, I'm not going to read that question. Sorry, William Jessup. Who else would like that? You're close. This could be easy. Although they have to run with the microphone.
Or you can talk real loud.
Hi there, I'm actually William Jessup.
Oh, yeah! Great question. I don't know why you did it.
I hope you remember at the beginning, I said I haven't done this before. I just thought it was too good and was going to make me look bad. So I'm doing it quiet.
Can I ask you one?
Sure, yeah. It was only because it was kind of like one that I'd already asked.
Not yet. It wasn't. And like, why did you make this film kind of purely as kind of escapist entertainment? Or do you think it has something to say, for us today?
I apologize if I'm offending anyone, but I have a real hard time with being preached at or preaching. I don't go to read, or listen to my entertainment for that. I feel like if an artist is honest, they will tap into some truth, some value, that they just really believe in, that hopefully is more emotional-based, humanity-based, than something political or something academic. I'm not against those. That's just never going to drive me. Maybe it's just because I'm in that camp where, I'm completely smitten by the music, and it takes me years to listen to the lyrics. You realize that song's about incest. Oh, really? I had no idea. I've had that song for years. So for me, how I'm wired up is if a message is going to come through, or messages, I want it to happen organically or almost by accident. I almost want to find out after the fact. I'm even like that with a theme. It's I want to let the movie tell me at some point, hopefully farther along, but with time to then own it, then to come around and go, oh, that's what I was saying and I didn't know it, and then adjust for that, so that it can be the most honest piece of work it can be.
So is your way in kind of through the character? You follow the truth of the
Gosh, it's anything. Anything can start it. Sometimes it's a visual. Sometimes it's a moment. It's a line. Anything can start it. I kind of equate it to, it's getting all spiritual, but I kind of equate it to an archaeological dig. All I can take credit for was I had the right instinct for where to start digging, but I have no say on what dinosaur I'm going to start digging up, and I have no say about which bones I'm going to get and when. And am I going to have the intestinal fortitude after a year and a half of digging and claiming I'm building a T-Rex only to find out, oh shit, the tailbone should be a neck bone, and it's actually a stegosaurus? Will I have the guts to admit that and then steer that way rather than forcing it to be what I said it had to be? And that I've always believed that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
See, that was a much better question than you had on.
You've made amazing movies in animation, and this is your first live-action film. But do you think you'll go back into animation, or are you going to stick with that?
Look, I never left it for this. There are more character animation shots in here than Finding Nemo. No, I've been asked that question a lot. So I don't feel like I left anything. I feel like I added on top of it. And the big myth or assumption is that I did the other films because I love animation. I love those ideas. And I love that they couldn't be done in any other medium, so it was the right marriage. I've loved this idea longer than any other idea, and I knew it had to be the marriage of these two mediums, and it was just going to force me to have to learn the other one. So it's not like I've been sitting around going, someday I'm going to do live action. It was almost against my will, because it was just the fanboy love that I built up over decades that just said, if you don't do it, nobody else will, and you're going to pass away on this earth and never get to see this. You've been spending your whole life waiting to buy a ticket to go see this, and it's not going to happen. And that's really what drove me to put up with so much. So it'll be all over the map. I mean, I'm psyched that I've learned this medium and that it kind of opens the doors. I think CG and live action are just getting more and more blended and more invisible and more tools that every director is just going to have to know. And we'll stop talking about it like they're separate things.
Do you think you'll do another one of these?
Well,
I'd like it if you did.
So like I said, there was 11 books. I was introduced. It was already done. It was my Harry Potter, growing up. So I always saw it as a series. And before there was such a nasty word as franchise or any of those things, I remember as a kid going, I wish there was a Bond series like this. And so my whole desire, including the other writers, was to start the snowball rolling. And so we wanted to treat it like a television season rather than a singular movie. So we got the rights to the first 3 books, and we outlined all 3 as a trilogy 3 years ago. And then we just got really serious on the writing of the script for this one. And we treated this like a pilot. My big issue with serial movies is that often they leave you with cliffhangers that are unsatisfying and also seem to have a little bit of hubris, like, oh, we'll be back, we're so confident about this movie. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have complete emotional closure.
Yeah.
But have some meta stuff that if we decide to go farther, there is plenty more to develop, not only plot-wise, but relationship-wise. I mean, that was a quick date and suddenly they're married. There's a lot of learning to meet each other that I find so juicy that we're writing right now for the next one. Of just on all the relationships. They're all beginnings at the end of this movie, which I find really exciting.
The dog whose name that's going to be, like, for a lot of kids, I think, what Chewbacca was for me. It's like,
A lot of adults, it's the pet everybody wants.
Jesus. It's when he first speeds up and suddenly shoots around. That's just killer.
We had a moment that I just always wanted to try and get in, and it always stopped the flow of the picture. So we never fully realized it in post, where Carter played catch, and he'd just throw it and go all the way over the hill, like a mile. And he'd come right back. And I always thought it was such a great gag, we could just never make it work.
The next one.
Oh, yeah, we'll probably. Oh, well, now it's out. But
You, this has been, people have tried to make this film a lot.
yeah. Since 1935.
So wasn't it Robert Rodriguez?
That was in 2003.
He had to go.
Yep.
Jon Favreau?
It went to Robert Rodriguez, then it went to Kerry Conran, then it went to Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau took it the farthest and was really close, but they couldn't agree on the budget. And so he had to leave, and he went on to do Iron Man, so I don't think he has any regrets.
Has he seen it yet? Have any of them seen it?
He came on. He called me right after the property went back, and we picked it up. And he was really nice. He didn't have to do this. He called me and said, "Look, I'm so bummed that I can't do this picture, but if it had to go to anybody, I'm so glad it went to you." And I just had one request, that I be a Thark. And I said, "Okay." So that bookie that holds the bowl says you lost your wages. That's Jon Favreau. And you get some weird fans out of the woodwork. I don't know if you noticed in the credits, David Schwimmer from Friends is actually a Thark. It's a Ross Thark. He has one line, 2 lines in it. Yeah, he was just a huge fan of the books, and who's going to know?
Hey, well, I think that is the end. I just want to say thank you, Andrew, for coming up in here and doing this Q&A. Thank you to you guys for
staying so late. I know it was a long trip.